Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You see this light behind me here? It's kind of annoying, isn't it? You probably want me to turn it off, don't you? This light is a good example of what the Brahmajyoti is like. It's the light shining from the forms of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. So I'm just going to leave it on for this presentation to emphasize once again the importance of their forms and to show how much we actually want to see past this all-shining light to see their forms beyond this light. Welcome, Kakadi Das. So tonight's topic is culty cults with a cult-like cherry on top. How to not become and how to not join a cult, and how to non-cultishly be a non-cult member with cool 100% cult VA and cult VB protection sunglasses on. So, I've been doing a lot of research into this brainwash cult thing recently, and I'm going to continue doing this over the next couple weeks, much more. And once again, sure enough, the common ground, like we always have talked about, amongst all of these, you can pinpoint them every time, is there's always, in every case, some middleman between the individual and God, or the individual and whatever the ideal of the cult is, whether that's personal or impersonal. That's the common ground between any form, within any form of brainwashing cult. So, we can immediately know that this is what's happening, or that this is what a movement or a group will turn into very soon, if it isn't already. There's always somebody in between the individual who is a member or adheres to the belief and the actual person that the cult is based around, or the ideals of the cult. Always an in-between, always. And not only is there only an in-between, there's almost in every case that in-between individual either directly or indirectly pushed and emphasized. Welcome, Presley. So, basically, I've been putting together this list of tenets for the International Harinama Sankirtana movement that I'm sure they're quite common sense things that we can all agree on, and that every Krishna devotee and every person coming into this can easily understand and easily agree on. Stuff that's really not complicated. But all stuff that will eliminate this type of weird brainwashing cultism from ever popping up among us, so that we can spread like wildfire, and so that the message will always be maintained about the direct connection being the most important factor. And so individuals coming in who are inspiring people, inspiring teachers, preachers, etc., they'll be adhering to the central message that we do all agree on. But as far as them themselves being promoted as a middleman between us and Radha Krishna, between us and their expansions, that will never occur. And actually, I'm actually putting this into writing as a specific central tenet of our practice, where there will be no preaching or pushing, directly or indirectly, of any type whatsoever, for any person to be initiated formally by any person, or to accept someone as a sort of middleman. That will never be a part of our preaching, teaching ever, under any circumstances. If somebody personally does that, that'll simply be between them and the individual. It'll be their personal choice, but it'll never actually be a standard tenet that's preached or promoted in any way, shape, or form. And this is as it should be, because since each individual is infinitely unique, their desire to go about things like that will be infinitely unique to them. So, like this light back here behind me again, you can see that it's very, very bright. It creates a very strange visual on the screen, when we're seeing it. But you can see, of course, what's more interesting in this video presentation is my face here, right? This person, this individual that's talking with you, interacting with you. It's far more interesting than that light shining behind my head. So, And of course, why is light the color that light is? You know, when we're talking about light based from, like, natural light, I should say, that isn't artificially put together or tinkered with or manipulated. So we're talking about sunlight and incandescent light, light from heat. It's always this very bright whitish, yellowish, glowing color. And the light is simply that way because that emanates from the skin color of Sri Radha. And darkness is darkness, and really black like that simply because that emanates from the skin color of Sri Krishna. That's all. So, so this dynamic between Radha and Krishna's skin manifests into matter as sunlight, physical light, incandescent bulbs, stuff like that, and space, the color of space at night, when there's no light shining around in space, and anything where there is the quote-unquote absence of light, that's where Sri Krishna's skin color is simply being emphasized. And so actually Krishna's personal light is actually shining through in that way, where Sri Radha's light is shining through via what we consider light in the temporal state also. So darkness and light are actually both coming from transcendent light. They're both forms of light, in fact. So just like in transcendence, everything is self-illuminated. I should say everyone is self-illuminated. And so every body, every form in transcendence shines light from their very self. So colors in transcendence are not based on light shining onto a form. So in the eternal world, in paradise, the color of my eternal skin and your eternal skin is not based on light, and others seeing that light is not based on a light shining onto our form from another source and then bouncing off. And then that's what people are seeing as color. That is how temporally, externally, light and color is experienced. But in transcendence, the colors and light both are emanating from the forms. Now, this, like this. Whoosh. Whereas on the temporal, it's the light from Radha and Krishna permeating the temporal world and bouncing off the temporal forms that we have. So, you know, I had a pair of sunglasses. I wanted to put them on actually for this presentation to make it funny. That's why I keep looking around for them, to make it that much more humorous. But anyway, you guys get the point. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a lot more research into this stuff, but I keep coming across this principle again and again, over and over again. So what's amazing about it is it's actually very easy to spot and actually very easy to nip in the bud initially, in the initial stages when things first come in. So like I said, I've been going on and on about this. How do we go about having this movement spread like wildfire, where we actually adhere to the superpersonal truth factually, at the same time each individual having their own infinitely personal relationship with the absolute persons, but at the same time completely having solid principles to where no form of impersonalism will ever come in among us in any shape or form. So I figured it out finally, how to actually do this. Because since the superpersonal face-to-face truth is actually the factual truth, and this is provable in so many ways, and backed up by all acharyas and all pure devotees all throughout history, and we understand that the impersonal aspect of things, how that works, how Krishna simply displays himself like that, etc., to those who insist on seeing him that way, but that he himself is actually the person factually, and never actually impersonal in any way, shape, or form. So since this is actually the fact, and it's an objective fact that's provable, it's not an opinion, and it's not a relative truth or individual person's idea of what the truth is. So anyone who has an impersonalistic idea is an illusion. This is a fact. They're not actually transcendently aware. And so adhering to this principle is key. But there is the three principles together. We've talked a little bit about in last presentation, but the three principles are, first and foremost, and these are all things that have to be taught, spoken, and agreed upon and acknowledged by every person in any movement, any group. Even if it is a group outside of our group, this is the same way that a group can go about not having this brainwashed cultism or personality cultism come into them, and at the same time still have inspirational leaders, speakers, and things arise within such movements without them turning into these weird, bizarre things, right? This is what we all want. We all want to have sane, common sense, healthy relationships with people around us now, just like we have in paradise and eternity. With rational, loving, affectionate individuals who are genuine, without any sort of this weird, you know, insane stuff that has to do with people getting forcefully driven uh, in ways against their will or whatever like this. so so basically, yeah, the first principle, number one, is emphasizing very strongly the importance between the direct connection between each infinitely unique individual and God, or whatever the ideal is. And specifically, I'm talking about the direct connection between Radha and Krishna, their forms, and their expansions, which are infinite in number and in form. So any form of Radha and Krishna, or any form of Lakshmi Narayana, any of their expansions that one chooses to be focused on or worship with, that is up to the individual's choice and preference. And Radha and Krishna are able to easily shape and shift their forms from the standard baseline set of features at any time. That's not a problem. And they're still Radha and Krishna, all the same. So that is the first part, the direct connection being emphasized. The second part is a set of very solid common sense tenets and principles, which Krishna has already given us all of these common sense things in the form of Varnashrama Dharma, but the real version of Varnashrama Dharma, the very, very real original version before any type of manipulation or misinterpretation came in, which you can see in this version. It's basically Sri Radha's version of Varnashrama Dharma, the Goloka Vrindavana version, in fact, where everything very much is really common sense. It's just, okay, people are engaged and encouraged to do what they're naturally inclined to do, and they're facilitated in doing so by whoever is the most influential person in leadership and by everybody around them. And this is a standard tenet. So this common sense stuff is the next key important thing. Anytime you start getting into anything that's like not commonsensical or within the realm of sanity, in terms of a tenet, like, okay, how do people go about their daily lives and things like this, then that's another thing leading into that weird brainwash world. Okay, so the direct connection, that number two part, common sense principles, and number three, the very highly strong emphasis and requirement of each individual to lovingly appreciate and focus on the infinite uniqueness of each person. So we're going to be we're beyond this concept of superiority, inferiority, and equality altogether. We're beyond all three of these ideas and types of thinking. Because when the emphasis is based on each infinitely important individual, Radha and Krishna, and each individual person also, then this eliminates the inclination and tendency for people in the movement as a whole to even want to create a personality cult around one specific person or this and that. So you can have you can even have worship of some person actually within this type of dynamic, but without people getting misled with the wrong perception of that worship. You see what I mean? To where it'll never be a thing of, okay, this personality is so great, this is such a great teacher, this and that, but without the element of this, therefore this person is like set apart from all of us in the sense of like he's greater than us or this or that, or anything along those lines won't be arising. It'll simply actually encourage and increase and have the opposite effect of where people will appreciate that person, and they will also appreciate themselves individually also more, and others also aside from that person more. And so, yeah, Kakadidas, I'll respond to all this stuff later on. That's how I decided to start doing these again, like I originally started doing them. About half-hour mark, keeping them to half hour to 45 minutes ish. But yes, I am definitely reading your comment here. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When people start learning about what Varnashrama Dharma actually is and how it works, they'll very much see how it is actually common sense. So like in a lot of the writings of Prabhupada and the Acharyas and things like that, they explained Varnashrama Dharma, but they didn't necessarily go so much into detail on it regarding each individual person that they came in contact with and interacted with. And there's actually a reason for this. Because those who are specifically Kshatriya Varna, they're the ones that actually deal with the Varna side of the equation. Brahmana Varna devotees generally don't actually deal with the Varnashrama situation, like directly. They will like guide the Kshatriya in terms of how to go about it, but it's actually the Kshatriya Varna people who are able to identify very clearly who is what Varna and how they're supposed to be engaged. And the symptom of this proper leadership will be seen that the people are all satisfied in what they're encouraged to do. So if there's a case where a person doesn't feel like they're being encouraged by the individual, then that means that person is not actually a Kshatriya, because Kshatriyas know how to engage people according to inclination. That's actually a symptom of a Kshatriya. So basically, since Prabhupada was Brahmana Varna, Bhaktisiddhanta was, and Ayendra Prabhu was, their psychophysical construction towards how they're processing the situation, they understand Varnashrama, what it is, how it works and stuff, but they're in a consciousness of being aloof from Varnashrama altogether, in their consciousness personally. So, but whereas Kshatriyas, they're very much so in the consciousness of keeping things organized according to Varnashrama, while at the same time going about devotion. This is a psychophysical difference in the two Varnas, actually. And simply, it's because people have been getting presented with Varnashrama by Brahmanas that they're not actually, that Varnashrama itself hasn't actually been established. Because the establishment of Varnashrama happens from Kshatriyas, not Brahmanas. Brahmanas aren't the ones who establish it. Kshatriyas establish Varnashrama Dharma. So, because the Brahmanas are busy with the internal stuff. That's what they're focused on. And they're not identifying people according to any of that at all either. So, but anyway, there's more specifics to it, but it's not as complicated as people think. It really isn't. There we go. So, yeah. And if anybody's seen the movie They Live, where he puts on those sunglasses, right? Gosh darn it, I wish I should have done it. I should have grabbed my sunglasses and had them with me. But anyway, you see the guy, he puts on his sunglasses, right? And then it's like, when he puts them on, he sees like all the signs of what they're really saying. Like with a sign will actually say obey, submit, when it's like just a regular magazine or something. And this, where it's like showing the picture of like a half nude lady or something, that it says like, submit, obey, we control you, etc., like that. Basically, it's showing that like when you actually see through the lies and stuff, you see what's really being encoded and blasted into your subconscious, from computers, TV screens, and magazines and stuff like that. And then he looks around and he sees a lot of these people are actually like these reptilian aliens and stuff, which is a real thing. Like the Nagas and things actually can shapeshift and they appear amongst humans and all sorts of stuff. That's a legit thing going on. So, but the movie itself was kind of funny and humorous, but it's a really cool movie because it has a lot of really great points, and it's like super cheesy early 90s stuff, right? But it's like, it really is like that's visually being shown in that, how the dynamic of like cultism and all this stuff works, because secularism in and of itself is actually a brainwashed cult. A lot of people don't realize this fact either. They're thinking that, okay, there's brainwashed cults over here, right? They basically have middlemen between, but actually secularism in and of itself has middlemen all over the place. They're the corporate leaders, the bankers. They are the middlemen of secularism. And this is a thing that people are not realizing. So if you're not recognizing that secularism also is actually a brainwash cult led by corporate executives, bankers, and moneylenders, then you're actually just as brainwashed as the people adhering to other types of brainwashed cults that have other people as middlemen, etc. And really, when it comes to the ideologies are very much secondary to whether something is actually a brainwashed cult or not. So you could have a brainwashed cult that is Krishna conscious, actually, and preaches a lot of truth, like 90 to 95% accurate truth, but still be a brainwashing cult at the end of the day, still, amidst all that accuracy. You could have another spiritual practice that is mostly legit also, like legitimate Christianity, but at the end of the day has elements of brainwash cultism involved in it, right? And you have this all over the place. So the point being is that the actual beliefs and ideologies, when we're coming to this brainwashed cult thing, uh, they all share commonalities, which we were talking about. Always those three things. If they're lacking those three factors, or if they're teaching or promoting something contrary to those three factors, so if they're leaving out the direct, or if they're not emphasizing the direct connection between the divine and the individual, okay, if they're leaving out the common sense elements of things in terms of sane common sense, baseline common morals and ethics that just make sense, human sense, and if they're also leaving out the third factor of emphasizing each individual's infinite importance as a factual tenet that is like a standard and a thing that has to be respected as a requirement. If they're leaving out any of those three, boom, it's a brainwashed cult right then and there, and you can identify it. It's very easy to see. So, like I always talk about this a lot, what I noticed about people who actually practice Wicca. So I'm just going to speak about individuals who actually practice. I myself love the Wicca practice and very many of the elements within it. Simply because a lot of people may not know this, but Wicca, what Wicca actually is basically a set of tools and a way to go about whatever it is you personally believe. And specifically, the emphasis is on the goddess and God at the center of focus, with a slight more emphasis on the goddess as the central important factor. And so this is very, very close to the actual truth of Radha and Krishna, their dynamic and stuff, things like this. But in Wicca, there is no specific dogma that says you have to accept this or that. So Wicca is very, very close to being fully Krishna conscious and in line with Sri Radha's message. They almost have it there. The only thing within Wicca that I call out regularly and tell people about and inform them of is that this is good. This dynamic you have that's set up is good. It is not. So Wicca is not a cult. It isn't, and it cannot be a cult for anyone who's actually familiar with it. So they've got it almost there. But the one thing that they're missing, though, is that they leave room open for impersonalism. So for people to individually have impersonal views and like speak them and talk about them, they leave room and allow that to happen in their circles. So even though like people don't have to accept those impersonal views individually, and we don't have to agree with them, and we can disagree with them in Wiccan circles, because it is very much about each individual's direct connection with the divine, right? And the overall emphasis is still on the personal face-to-face with the goddess and God emphasis. They still leave room for like syncretic Brahmavadi stuff to come in and to infiltrate and to creep in, kind of like and then it translates to a lot of people individually in Wicca adhering to those ideas and things. So yeah, so basically that's what I've liked about it. I've liked Wicca because I've been able to practice Krishna consciousness as it is and feel fully comfortable doing so, talking about Krishna consciousness openly with these people and being able to just breathe and discuss what's actually true and not get reprimanded, judged, or anything like this, and have a community that actually accepts me among them in a calm, sane manner. That's what I've experienced with Wicca. Far more so than actually I've experienced across the entirety of the world of Krishna consciousness or Krishna devotees, which I've been quite amazed by. So, but I'm like, well, this is actually the dynamic we're supposed to have in Krishna consciousness, but we need to have, of course, what Wicca is missing is the complete, solid, united front against all forms of impersonalism and tinges thereof. So basically, anybody's views or whatever that they want to express or preach or teach, like in big classes or podiums, and have them associated with our movement, right? Like people can randomly teach whatever they want individually. That's their free will. But if they want to teach stuff that's associated with our movement specifically, then they're going to be having to teach things that are personal in nature, that they, at the baseline minimum, accept that the Supreme Person is God, is the goddess and God, face to face, and that they understand the nature of what that means with no Brahmavadi tinges or whatever. So even if their form preference is a different form from Radha and Krishna specifically, they'll still understand that the Supreme is the person, is the goddess and God, and that will be what they talk about, right? So, so yeah, basically, it's a very simple thing too. And what's really exciting me about all this is that we're going to be attracting a lot of these types of people who really want to be able to freely practice, but who are also very passionate about the personal connection that they have individually with the goddess and God. So having a forum to talk about this and show their inspirations thereof, and while at the same time being freed of impersonal tinges, all at the same time. It's a very beautiful thing, actually. So, of course, this naturally will develop along with Harinama Sankirtana, but teaching these things specifically like this and emphasizing certain things more than others is going to really help this a lot, actually. Because all this stuff we're talking about right now has not been emphasized so far in any of the preaching or teaching of Krishna consciousness across the board worldwide that I've seen anywhere at all. And so, but this is what is needed to be happening for thousands of years. Thousands of years this is needed to happen since Krishna's actual appearance on this planet, in fact. But what's been happening in most cases is simply so many pure devotees have been very well intentioned, but their preaching has it's only registered with very, very particular types of people, okay, who are like already like super hyper attuned to stuff like this, you know, and like feel people out and all sorts of things. But the mass of the populace is not like that. They just cannot feel out what a pure devotee is actually getting at, how they're actually feeling about what they're trying to express across. They're just going to be seeing how the person expresses themselves on paper. They're going to be seeing the words used, the way they write sentences, the way they structure their sentence. They're going to be, most people are going to be seeing that factor more so than what is actually in the heart of the pure devotee. Because the fact is, most people are sincere to one degree or another in the sense of wanting to live a good life, be moral, and have an ideal destination after death, you know, where they're continuing to love and be loved and give a love, you know. That's a nice thought that most people have. But the thing is, the vast majority of individuals simply do not have the degree of attunedness to the internal state of things and to the eternal reality of things to not misinterpret what's being said to them. Okay? So this not misinterpreting things factor comes from having inherently a very strong depth of internal vision already in the person. Okay? Which is not something we can just expect by default for everybody to have. So, and since we're focusing on the uniqueness of each individual here, we're not focusing on, okay, this individual's more unique than this person. There's no such thing as somebody being more unique or less unique. No. Infinitely unique. Each individual is infinitely unique. And this is an objective fact. So this means I'm not more unique than you. You're not more. In fact, the whole concept of more or less isn't even present here at all. It's not even a thing. More or less isn't even a thing at all in transcendence. In fact, in transcendence, there is only more and never less. So, okay, so if we say that I'm more unique than you, then that means you're more unique than me, and then that person's more unique than us. It just goes on infinite like that. And there's no such thing as somebody being less unique than somebody else, right? This is transcendent fact. But this vision and this understanding can only happen in people when this is actually taught to them and discussed specifically, okay? Because if we just leave things vague or generalized, like, okay, you're a living being, you're eternal, this and that, blah, 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 then the importance of this infinite unique factor isn't going to register. And so we're going to be leaving out that key thing that we were talking about that leads to cultism and allows its potential to develop. But we can't be leaving that out, and we're never going to leave that out, in fact. So basically, the International Harinama Sankirtana movement, very much so, is actually going to, one of our central tenets is actually now specifically being able, like a specific methodology of how to pinpoint personality cultism and how to not allow it to arise. Like, not allowing that to arise is a tenet of the International Harinama Sankirtana movement. So what I decided, this is the key here. This is a thing that's going to actually be inherently built into what we teach and what we talk about and what we do here. Where not me, not you, not anybody who comes in, no matter how pure of a devotee they are, how pure of a person they are, how great they are, factually, none of them will be allowed to become personality cult figures that have cults develop around them. None of them will be able to have this happen. They may be worshipped and praised and glorified as they are, as the infinitely unique person that they are factually, but not in a way that anyone else at all, to any degree, um, is made out to be less than them on either the mental, physical, or transcendental levels. So this is actually going to force in a healthy way, not force in like a domineering, tyrannical way, but I should say push and inspire and influence people in the right direction of internal vision, of pure devotees vision. So we're going to get people having the vision of pure devotees even before they become pure devotees, basically. So it's literally going to be training people to see everyone accurately, and that's going to be the entirety of the focus, and seeing themselves individually accurately also. And so this means appreciating yourself deeply and everyone else factually. And since this is going to be required and is required, there won't be room for people to be mistreating others or putting them down or being cruel or anything like this. There won't be room for that because they'll be immediately exposed for not adhering to our tenets immediately, you know. And you'll just look at anybody. So when people express anger or fury or any of this type of stuff, if it's in direct relationship to their passion for glorifying the form of Radha and Krishna or the form of one of their expansions, because they're dealing with the Supreme Person, the infinitely beautiful persons, that fury and so-called anger and all that stuff, that is their healthy, loving expression towards the depth of their feeling towards the Supreme Person, right? And that is actually going to always be encouraged among us. So even if there's disagreement amongst people, if one's really like obsessive about Vishnu's form and another one's really obsessive about Krishna's form, but their common ground is they both accept that the absolute truth is the person face to face, and that their form is eternal, okay, and beyond all pervasive. And with that being the common ground, all those types of passions and disagreements are actually healthy and welcome, because the people disagreeing in those cases actually will feel love and affection for each other, and they're not going to argue and disagree in a way that they want to cut off contact or can't stand talking to each other or interacting. Whereas if there was these impersonal elements allowed in, that would be a factor where people want to stop talking, cut off, and everything, because their common ground remains the same. The absolute is the person face to face, infinitely beautiful, period. And regardless of whether one actually 100% accepts that Radha and Krishna specifically are the central supreme, that is going to be the central baseline standard tenet of us, yes. But if someone has a personal inkling or desire, and on a personal level they actually feel in their heart that Lakshmi Narayana are supreme, the forms or whatever, that's okay too as well. But that's not going to change the central tenet that Radha and Krishna's central source form is the original source form of all their other forms, basically. So when people understand the science of expansions, they don't misunderstand this in any way. They don't, basically, they'll recognize and they'll see that, once again, there's no less, there's only more. So, like, let's say you're more attracted to Balarama, right? Krishna in his white form. The Balarama is no less in any way, shape, or form to Krishna personally, because Balarama is Krishna himself. And so the nature of an expansion of Krishna is not the nature of someone or some form that's lesser than the source. That's not how expansions work. They're equally important to the source, and still also the source because it's the same person, just displaying with a unique form, you see. So yeah, but when people have a mature understanding of form, which is what we're going to be discussing all the time, it's going to be very easy to sort out these little things. You know, so one person preferring worship of Lakshmi Narayana, one person preferring worship of Radha and Krishna, but they all will understand that Radha and Krishna are the source central forms, without thinking that means in weird way in the back of their mind that Lakshmi and Narayana are like less or not as, you know, important or not as beautiful or something. They won't be thinking of it that way. They'll be understanding it correctly, that I prefer this dynamic with Lakshmi and Narayana, but I know that they're Radha and Krishna still. Like that, they'll understand this. It won't be a thing where they have to see it, because they're not going to be seeing it in a superior inferior type manner. They're not going to be looking at it as a pyramid or a hierarchy. They're going to simply be seeing it as out of pure affection, right? Yeah. So that's going to be sorted out, because I know that's the thing. A lot of people are going to come. Well, if we're promoting Radha and Krishna as the center, then some people who want to do, you know, Krishna's expansions or even Krishna's, because the original form of Shiva, Sada Shiva, is actually one of Krishna's direct expansions, and Parvati and all this stuff too. Or I should say the original Durga Devi and everything are transcendental forms of Radha and Krishna. And then they expand themselves into material branch offs of those forms, etc. But yeah, so that's not going to be a concern or anything that's going to be difficult at all. Um, uh, and we'll be able to achieve a lot of great things this way. Yeah, and so basically with all of these things in place, it's actually going to become much easier to see, for everyone to see very clearly which Varna a person is and what psychophysical type they have. So, so like someone being inclined towards combat or fighting doesn't mean their Kshatriya inclination, because once again, the science of combat, the art of combat, things related to combat, weaponry, etc., can be either Kshatriya or Shudra activity, depending on the nature of the contemplation and the way a person goes about it. So, and there's many examples like this, but regarding weaponry and combat and all this type of stuff, the ones who are leadership minded, organizational minded, and who think along with the combat, outside of the combat directly, in the sense of how to organize societies, how to set things up, how to engage people properly, those are Kshatriyas. Okay, a person is a Shudra with a combat speciality. So in other words, they would be fit for like being a guard of a temple, or a soldier on the battlefield, or something like that, or a warrior on the field led by a Kshatriya, if they are interested in the combat side of things, but without the organizational leadership inclinations or tendencies in terms of how to organize things on a larger scale. If they're lacking that side of things, that's not Kshatriya Varna. Kshatriya Varna is leadership, and that comes along with combat interest and with that. But if it's just combat interest and just weapon interest without the leadership side of things being involved, that's Shudra Varna, with a speciality in soldiering combat. And like Shudra Varna is actually a very wide range of activities. A lot of people in the modern world have the wrong idea of Shudra Varna, that it's just people doing like menial labor and stuff. No, that's actually not the case at all. The menial labor side of things, or that's only that particular type of Shudra who likes to do that stuff, like a person who likes to clean houses, who likes to function as a maid, who likes to just cook, or somebody who likes to do specific crafts more than others as their big focus, like people who like to build houses, or like to do music, or like to do art, like specialized craftsmen, musicians and things. Those are all different types of Shudras, all of them are. And then the ones who plow fields and who deal with animals and do the physical work on fields, the only ones doing that are the people inclined to do that type of thing. And it's arranged in such a way that they actually don't have to do that much work anyway. So, yeah, that's Shudra Varna in reality. And then, of course, there's other examples of this too. Like, there's many people inclined to read scripture, right? Study scripture and go really deep into intellectual things and stuff like that. But unless they have the inclination with that to actually go deep and actually do things a certain way, unless they have the inclination to naturally be renounced from like material stuff, okay, and accumulation of wealth, if they don't have that natural inclination along with the deep intellectual, spiritual studying and scriptural stuff, that's not Brahmana Varna either. That's still, in most cases, Shudra Varna or Vaishya Varna, and or Kshatriya Varna, depending on what the activities are that the person always immediately goes back to the second that they're not engaging in scriptural study specifically, or meditation and chanting specifically. So you just have to look at what is a person driven to do when they're not specifically chanting Japamala or specifically reading a scripture. And if that's literally mainly what they're continually inspired to do all the time, preach, read scripture, chant Japamala, see things internally, if that's like that's what they want to spend their entire day doing, period, that type of thing, that is actual Brahmana Varna. Whereas a person may be interested in Krishna consciousness, all the deep stuff, but once the second they're done doing that, they're inclined to do like mechanic work on cars, or they're inclined to work on fields, or work with like, cows or something, to do animal husbandry and all this type of stuff. That is either Vaishya Varna and it depends on what type of nature of that work is. So people who are always inclined towards doing those types of things on a leadership scale, on a small scale leadership scale, are the Vaishya Varna people. So people inclined towards the dealing with money, like the money flow and this type of thing, who are really focused on economics and that type of, those tend to be the Vaishya Varna individuals. So, because we all do stuff and think about things the very second we're not exactly engaging in chanting Japamala or reading scripture. There's always a certain nature of how we're thinking about it. And even when we're doing those things, there's actually a psychophysical factor involved in how we're processing what we're reading and what we're doing also, you know. And so it's still there, actually. Yes. So basically, yeah, this is good news. This is all really good news, actually. So I'm working on the finalized document for this that we can just use and have, that we can show people as a list of what the International Harinama Sankirtana movement is all about, what we classify as people who are associated with us, and that we are specifically pushing forward with Lord Sri Chaitanya's personal desire in this particular unique way, right? Together as a team. So, and our common ground, of course, being the super personal truth, the face-to-face connection with each individual directly with Radha and Krishna. And what's unique about what we're doing that sets us apart from all the other teaching and preaching that's been going on for thousands of years is that we very strongly emphasize that anything to do with a person getting initiated or not, and who they do so with, all that stuff is going to be 100%, 108% on each individual to choose to do or not to do, and that's simply going to be their own personal thing. Period. That's it. There will be no promotion of figureheads. Like people can personally recommend, like saying, okay, yes, I would recommend this person. This person is definitely qualified to do this. I would vouch for this person, blah, blah, blah. If people personally have that opinion or say that, they can do that all they want. But that's not going to be classified as a central tenet of the International Harinama Sankirtana. That's just going to be, once again, their personal opinion also on that thing. So, because we're adhering to the fact of the Harinama Sankirtana movement and the purpose of Harinama Sankirtana and what this actually is. So that every word we speak and every sentence we put together, every topic we discuss, is going to be seen by us as being names of Radha and Krishna, names of the goddess and God. So that there really won't be any such thing as just words anymore. They'll all be names of Radha and Krishna. So we'll recognize that all sound vibrations are their names, connected to their forms, and many of these other things like this, basically the emphasis on infinite uniqueness and stuff. And so this is gonna create a really nice hub for people worldwide when they really want relief from all sorts and all types of cultism, fanaticism, brainwashing, stuff like this, where they really want a place where they can actually express their personal devotion to the Supreme Lord and feel welcomed in doing so, and being also at the same time freed and knowing solidly that they can rely on other people and us to never allow impersonalism to come in on any level. So yeah, it's going to really create a nice haven for devotees worldwide, and a genuine haven. So they're going to come to us together as a family, worldwide, wherever we are, and they're not going to feel these weird pressures that they keep running into. Oh, of course, they're not going to run into this weird fake Raganuga cult stuff that's now coming up. It's a big popular thing, or I should say, like artificially emphasized Raganugaism, or any of these types of other things, that may not be like that. They're not going to be running into the guru figurehead stuff and the issues that follow that, because they're going to be dealing with people in a situation, in a movement that is specifically doesn't allow those things to arise, actually, by our very tenets themselves and how they're set up. So this is definitely a huge aspect of Sri Radha's personal mission, and what she's wanted for a very long time to happen. She wants she wants you individually to be free, my friends. Uh, Liberation in the real sense, and beyond liberation, pure love and affection, beyond even freedom. So, um, so this is how we're gonna do it, and I'm gonna truck forward with it, and I'm sure you all are very enthusiastic to assist me in this, and I thank you for that, very much so. So, welcome, Patrick. So yeah, very excited tonight about these developments that have been happening, and yeah, Sri Radha's prediction has been coming true. Like on her appearance day, yeah, devotees are already starting to move out here to Boise, and we're starting to actually develop into a very solid, cohesive community that's actually a united front, which is a very good thing. Very good thing, and has needed to happen for a while. Because the thing is, we can only do so much isolated wherever we are individually throughout the world, scattered. I mean, we can make impact, but we can only do so much that way. It's very important we have centers and places where we can congregate physically together and gather and talk and spread Krishna consciousness in this wonderful, unique way together. This is very important, and so yeah, it's a beautiful thing, because we're gonna be. I should say we are. Everything must be in present tense to be made manifest as quickly as possible. So we are setting up centers right now as we speak. We are actually doing all these types of things, and so looking for locations to ideally do this in and stuff. And so right now what we got going online with people worldwide talking this stuff, having these video chats, this is a very good thing actually too, because I can guarantee you everywhere else people are going, when they're trying to come in contact with Krishna consciousness, they're running into this cultism stuff that we're talking about that we're not going to be involved in. They're either running into the ISKCON stuff or the Ritvikism thing or the false Raganuga emphasis stuff. And in every case, they're dealing with middlemen stuff. In all these cases, people are just wanting a direct connection. That's what they're wanting. And that's what they're needing, because that's their eternal state. So, so it's time we give each individual the direct connection and the support system to have that direct connection. Not just as some willy-nilly, saying it or typing it on a screen, like, oh yeah, it's, we're all unique individuals, and that, but because you notice what's been going on is like people will do that, but then they'll go right back and say like, but ultimately it's all about it's all about devotional service. But it keeps going always back to those vague things again. Like, okay, it's all about causeless service at the end of the day, right? Well, it's like, yeah, it is about that, but we're interested in dealing with the specifics and all the details and the nature of what that means. That's what we're interested in. We're not interested in just the generalization anymore. People are tired of generalizations. That's because vagueness and generalization is by nature impersonalistic. It's because it's not specific. Because personality is specific, because you're dealing with specific features, specific details of a person's form. And so when you're dealing with form, you're dealing with detail. You're not dealing with vague generalizations. So, yeah. And Hare Krishna. So, yeah, feel free to chime in, my friends, at this point. I've said a lot of what I wanted to say tonight, and then let's kind of shift it more into the discussion mode. I think we've got this down pretty good now. We kind of have a certain flow to how we do these talks and stuff. So Patrick, Kakadi Das, Nicholas, whichever one of you guys are here, yeah. And I'll continue on. I do have a lot more that's on my mind that I'll keep talking about, but I'm just going to wait a few seconds to see if anybody comments any further on this stuff. And then Nicholas Paris, he specifically is mentioning here, Trivarna being Dvijas, following Samskar, are also preparing to take up Bhakti, like reaching the elevate for Diksha, as well if Bhakti manifests. I find this very important in Varnashrama Dharma. Let's see. Okay, no problem, Patrick. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find this one especially interesting, and especially a breath of fresh air from a lot of the other stuff. Probably even from a lot of the other stuff I've been presenting up to this point, even. In fact, this one is a lot more of a sober mood type thing, just a sober, sane, rational type presentation about a very like practical brass tacks. Like, okay, let's do very common sense, realistic things. Like, let's come together. Let's have a set of tenets that will guarantee personality cultism doesn't arise, and let's all actually agree on this, and so that we do have our common ground, that we can work from, and at the same time emphasizing each individual's infinite uniqueness as an actual central tenet of this, and not just some side thing. Because I've noticed this happening a lot in up to this point. Has been there's basically people have been just kind of like sentimentally or pseudo like appreciating, oh yeah, each individual is unique because they're jivat, but there hasn't really been, this hasn't actually been made a central tenet of, like, the people have to see things that way, though. Like, you actually have to value each individual and specifically value their uniqueness, actually. This has really been getting brushed aside, and most of the preaching and teaching has been shifting towards actually things that are impersonalistic, but people aren't recognizing at all are impersonalistic. And the biggest aspect of this unrecognized impersonalism is seeing all living entities as this amalgamated, oh, they're just all living entities and they're all unique, as some general thing. Like, no, uniqueness means uniqueness. It's not just some general, willy-nilly up in the air concept. Oh, they're unique and that's it. No, it's like, okay, well, how are they unique? How is this particular person unique? What do they have? What wonderful features do they have to their personality, to themselves, right? And like really honing in on these things with each person. This is a key thing, because it's basically been, okay, the living entities are unique, they're important, but it's all about Radha and Krishna's forms, which it is, yes. But what that means is when things really do become all about Radha and Krishna's forms, then by default, naturally, it also becomes all about each and every other individual's eternal form, and not only that, how they're manifesting in the conditioned state in the temporal personality also, right? That also becomes infinitely important, simultaneous with the infinite importance of Radha and Krishna's forms. So fixation on their forms doesn't minimize, in fact, it has quite the opposite effect. It increases your appreciation for the uniqueness of each individual. It doesn't have the effect of where you're now like, okay, it's Radha and Krishna's forms, and now I don't care about the other individuals at all. They're just living entities. That type of mindset. That's not how it works. No, you very much start to appreciate them more, and you start to see them in an actual affectionate light. Because what does affection mean? And what's the nature of actual pure affection? Pure affection means you actually love and appreciate all the little detailed quirks and features and things about somebody on a very deep level. You feel good about them, right? That is what pure affection is. And so when Radha and Krishna say that the best service to them is actually serving their devotees, they're talking about the living entities. They're talking about each and every single living entity, in fact, because all living beings are pure devotees. That is what it means to be a living being. So therefore, they're making it very clear to us what we need to be doing. Just like we appreciate Radha and Krishna's forms, we need to also appreciate all other forms too, in the real, correct, transcendental understanding sense, and not in the sentimental sense. Let's see. Welcome, Karuna. Okay. Yes, and when I say reestablishment, I'm just talking about I should say re-implementation, Nicholas. That'd be a better way to word it. Yeah, because the Varnashrama system is already naturally here already. It just takes actual Kshatriyas organizing people according to their Varnas. And since that's always been my inclination, I've always been able to very clearly see how people can be properly engaged. It's very easy. It's not difficult. It's just the way society is set up. It makes it challenging artificially for people to... It makes it artificially challenging unnecessarily for people to be able to engage in what they're inclined to do naturally and flourish at, right? So, because really the current situation is everybody's so bogged down by stuff that they're not inclined to do that they feel misery, and therefore their misery causes them to feel tired and exhausted mentally and physically. And then most people associate, oh, this person is lazy and that. Well, it's just people are just trying to escape this artificial imposition of things they're not inclined to do over their heads. And that's in Varnashrama Dharma, you have everybody free from that 100%. Everybody is doing what they're inclined to do. So, like, I'm naturally inclined to lead, to do martial arts, to combat, and scriptural study, and to teach. And that's just a natural inclination I have. It's not something I choose to okay, I'm going to choose today to want to teach, to want to do combat. I just naturally feel inclined to do it. And that's Radha and Krishna's personal push for me to do so. And just like others have no inclination whatsoever to engage in anything to do with combat, unless their life depends on it, and they'd rather spend their day entirely doing other things aside from combat-related stuff. And that's also Radha and Krishna's arrangement for them. So yeah, that's the natural Varnashrama inherently. So, but that's the thing. Whoever's in leadership, which has to be an actual Kshatriya, with an organizational thinking process that understands the common sense of how Krishna organizes stuff. Kshatriyas are required in leadership because we're the ones who can actually do so. We're the ones who can actually engage people properly. Whereas if you have a Vaishya in leadership, or a Shudra, or even a Brahmana in leadership, in many cases, unless he understands these things about Varnashrama. But nowadays but even if you have only those other Varnas, they're still not going to properly be able to lead people, because they don't have the type of vision Kshatriyas have, which is why Kshatriyas are the leaders, because they have the psychophysical construction for doing it. And whereas the other Varnas don't, they're not fit for it properly, except in emergency situations as temporary leadership. And then when the Kshatriya comes in, he takes over leadership again. But nowadays we just have mlechas, and at the very best, I say best, at a very with quotation marks, because it really isn't best at all. The very best Yavanas basically leading people, which Yavanas basically are people who kind of appreciate the Vedic principles to some degree, but they don't actually solidly adhere to them. And they have Yavanas within and outside of Krishna consciousness, right? And then mostly it's just mlechas, though. Corporate mlechas and corporate bankers and stuff who have no appreciation for Varnashrama Dharma. And in fact, many of them are directly working with Kali specifically to stop Varnashrama from being established, and specifically to stop Harinama Sankirtana and this perspective thereof that we're talking about from becoming mainstream. Because once that happens, they will not be able to lead, rule, or run things the way they do anymore. They won't, actually. Whether they're conquered or not, or whether people just stop agreeing to what they're doing, either way they won't be able to lead. So the point being, yeah, it's just the society currently is full of misleaders and bad preaching, bad teaching, and within and outside of Krishna consciousness, right? Even within the secular world, all of these things that are being done are actually, because it constantly keeps bringing those middlemen in, right, between the individual and the direct divine connection. And because this middleman thing always keeps coming in and being imposed in teaching, ideology, etc., literally the Krishna consciousness movement, or the infiltrated version of Krishna consciousness, is directly contributing to this continued corporate system by not emphasizing the direct connection, by not actually valuing each individual uniquely as a standard tenet that's fact, and by not actually having very sane common sense things as principles that are standards, like having to have fruit trees planted on every roadside, mandatory, period, as a common sense thing, so that people can be fed who don't have homes and who have to walk on the streets and live out there for whatever reason. They will have food. This is a common sense, sane principle, okay? And this is what I'm saying, like all these very brass tacks, simple things. Ensuring that the population has clean, filtered water, setting up water filter stations everywhere, and educating every man, woman, and child on how to filter their own water and how to make filters, etc. There's very sane, simple things like this that make sense, so that people have water to drink and that they have food to eat. I mean, it's even on the secular perspective, this is sane and this is common sense. But you'll notice, even in the secular world, right, which is a brainwash cult also, they're not planting fruit trees on all the roadsides. They're coming with infinities of stupid excuses. Oh, there's going to be bees, you're going to have to clean it up, it's going to look bad, blah, blah, blah. It's all a bunch of bogus excuses they come up with that are completely based on illusory concepts towards everything. And we can go I've gone hours worth on that already. how erroneous that type of thinking is. So, and that's because those types of people simply aren't kshatriyas. They don't understand these things. Their brain substance is not working properly. So they don't understand common sense. They don't understand sanity, and they do not understand what actually needs to be done on a very simple level that isn't complicated. They don't. It's just their entire brain, their entire psychophysical everything is so much in this concocted world machine thinking about industrial factories and money making and oil, gasoline, electronics, all this stuff is just filling their brains, you know, um, to the point that they can't not even process the most basic things. And these are the individuals we're dealing with right now in the world. Really stupid people, like just really dumb people. It's just a fact. And then even amongst the truth movement, you have a lot of really, really dumb people also, because you come to them and you always get back to these brass tack, really simple things. Well, and many of them, when you say, okay, then let's just make it mandatory to plant fruit trees on every single roadside, every single highway, everywhere, instead of ornamental trees, so that you'll have good, nice looking ornamentals plus fruit for people to eat. Then they get these blank eyes and they don't even know how to respond to you. A lot of these so-called truthers and stuff. Well, it's like, well, we're actually providing you with the very simple solution here. And let's just have people start going back to landlines instead of cell phones, and nobody will do it. It's because. So the point is, you have to have actual kshatriyas leading, because things don't get done without actual kshatriyas leading. They don't. The other varnas don't understand how to do it. It's really as simple as that. Really as simple as that. Okay. Yeah, of course. And devotion is the center. Yeah, Karuna Sindhu, you're saying a lot of things that are true about like the bhakti being important and stuff like that. We covered that a lot actually in all the other presentations. Varnashrama comes along with and is a side effect and directly related to actual truth, direct relationship with Radha and Krishna. Yep. Yeah. Well, the Karuna Sindhu, yeah, by the nature of your statement there, it's indicating to me there's a lot. It would be useful for you to watch regarding what we presented, because yeah, I, I won't be the one digging the fields. I'll be the one training, definitely, in combat. Other people will work in fields. Other people won't be working fields and studying scripture. It's going to be an individual thing. But yeah, I noticed that there's a lot of people who mistakenly seem to think that Varnashrama is like some separate thing from Harinama Sankirtana and vice versa. No, Varnashrama is simply naturally what's there in us already. Like Nicholas keeps saying, the psychophysical construction. And it's about the unique connection that each individual has with Radha and Krishna. Yes. But once again, like I'm saying, we're dealing with these, a lot of these misleading so-called Raganuga groups that are basically promoting the idea that anyone who is spontaneously ecstatic in devotion, and there are many devotees who are spontaneously ecstatic in devotion, that aren't being recognized as such, simply because they're not self-promoting themselves as such publicly. And simply because they are keeping that to themselves privately or according to personal choice or whatever. But the Gauda Haridas, as much as I love him and respect him, there has been a personality cult developing around him, yes, and this is a big problem. And I'm saying this openly public. Him being worshipped and glorified as the infinitely unique, wonderful person he is, and the great devotee that he is, even the pure devotee that he is, that I see him internally is a wonderful thing. But the personality cult that has been developing around him is a very unhealthy, bad dynamic. Just like it's been developing around Dharma Pravartika Acharya gradually, it's starting to develop around him. But thankfully, in Dharma Pravartika Acharya's fold right now, a lot of the people that go to him like are very sane people, and he tends to preach in such a way that he likes people to maintain that sanity and stuff, even though um, there's kind of some little bit of allowance of that personality cultism to develop around him in the way he talks about the master disciple relationship and stuff. The point I'm trying to make here is um, glorifying all these individuals is a great thing, and loving them is a great thing, because they're doing many amazing things in Christian consciousness. But don't develop personality cults around any of them, nor myself, nor yourself, nor please don't allow this to develop around anybody else either. Just because we're a team, okay? Every devotee of Krishna is a teammate of all other devotees. We are in this together. So therefore, because we are in this together, that means together. It doesn't mean that, okay, this person is now the person we're going to glorify as our savior, our salvation, the next great guru, and then this person is the next great guru. It's like, yes, they are great gurus, but you also are very infinitely, significantly important individually also. And you can never neglect or brush aside this fact at all. And everyone else also, even aside from that individual, is also infinitely important, valuable, and must be worshipped and praised and loved also, okay, for the infinitely unique being that they are. That is the case. So so none of this exclusivism, like, okay, this person, like tunnel vision, then this person, okay, this person's over here. This stuff is just not necessary. It really isn't. Because Radha and Krishna's forms are at the center. That's the focus. That's the common ground. And the personal preferences aside from that are personal preferences. So yeah. So yes, and Patrick Coyne very much so. Prabhupada very much so does want these communities put into place. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so like let's see what it was. Okay, yeah, so basically up until this point within our movement, there's kind of like a general history of Krishna brainwashed cults that have branched off of what Krishna consciousness is supposed to be and has always been. And in the earlier days, right, when Prabhupada came to American stuff, they tended to be branch off cults based much more on the Vaidhi obsessed stuff, artificially imposing regulations on people and stuff, and this type of weird dynamic, and then the guru figureheads and stuff. But now it's actually shifted completely in the opposite other direction, of where it's still based on these middlemen figureheads, but now there's this really popular resurge of people, going on and on about this Raganuga stuff, Raganuga, which is, yes, all of Krishna consciousness that has to do with Goloka Vrindavana, Radha and Krishna, spontaneous affection, is of the Raganuga nature. Ragatmika, and then leading into Raganuga. But the point of it, there's no need for people to get so detailed about like the detailed scientific point by point stuff about it. That stuff could be gone into for hours if people are interested on it. But the point is, just to keep it simple so people don't get confused. It's the spontaneous, pure loving affection for Radha and Krishna being the central emphasis and focus as the most important. Yes, is the most important thing. And that's always been the case. But the thing is now, what's becoming really popular nowadays is people, once again, bringing these middlemen in. Okay, and this has been going on within Gaurahari's fold. Like I'm saying, he's a great individual, and I love him to death. And I should say I love him eternally, because saying that word death, people have all sorts of weird misinterpretations of what I say. So I love him very deeply. But the thing is, this, and I've told him this many times over. I've said to Gaurahari, there's a personality cult developing around you, and you're letting it happen. And you don't have to let this happen. Like, you're doing so many great things. And you could do it in such a way where you still maintain your influence, your greatness, and you emphasize the purity of Raganuga Bhakti. You can do all these things still, and to be praised all the same, or I should say, have people praise Radha and Krishna all the same, but without these personality cultism elements developing around you. And I said, if you keep doing it the way you're doing it right now, this is what you're going to have to face. So, and it's not. And don't look at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm talking about him only. No, I'm talking about anyone and all of us could get into that type of situation. It could happen with me even, where so I'm talking all these great things, and if we don't have these tenets in place as checks to stop that from happening, a personality cult could develop around me easily, the way it did around Gaura Das, around any of these other people who are influential preachers and teachers or whatever, right? It could happen to any of us. But you have to have a checks and balances in place so that can't happen. And there's so many reasons for this too. And like we said before, even if a person is actually a pure devotee, still you have to have checks and balances not to allow personality cults to develop even around pure devotees in that type of twisted way. And the reason for that is as soon as that pure devotee is physically gone, you're guaranteed to have people coming in, misinterpreting things, throwing things around. Guaranteed to happen, okay? Even if the person is a pure devotee, right? In practice and in everything else. I should say an externally confirmable pure devotee on the external plane also. So yeah, all these things are very, very important things to look at. So I've seen it, and I've seen it with many individuals who legitimately are pure devotees, right? But they still just, a lot of times they're not even aware it's going on. They're like not even aware a weird personality cult is developing around them, right? And it's always those elements, though. It's basically they kind of allow themselves to become the middleman between the person and Radha and Krishna, and that's what goes on basically. But the ones who are honest about it, once you mention it to them, they take heed and they're like, oh, you know what? This actually is taking place. Let me make some adjustments to fix this. Prabhupada himself noticed that was going on with himself and made things to fix that. Indra Prabhu noticed it, and he clarified that to people who were looking at him kind of erroneously like that. Bhaktisiddhanta happened with him too, and he clarified it to the disciples that they need to have the correct perspective of him and things. So it really does happen with every pure devotee, but the ones who are really serious about what they're doing, they always make sure to have the tenets and things set up in place to where that stuff doesn't arise. And like I said, Prabhupada is simply the way he was, his personality, etc. When he left, the way he left things, it was in a way where things could potentially majorly be misinterpreted. You know, the way he set things up, the way things worded, not because he personally did anything wrong per se, it's just because that's the way he is naturally. Like, that's his personality, so therefore, you know, it takes others of us individually to ensure that Prabhupada doesn't get misused and abused like a body bag for people basically wanting to dump their sins on him and things like this, you know. Let's see. And Patrick, welcome, Loka. You say, Srila Prabhupada wanted these communities put in place to show the masses how to live. He said people will come and we can teach them how to live. Exactly. Now here's the thing. With okay, let's see here. Well, here's the thing, Nicholas. When I'm talking about Gaurahari, I'm talking about him internally, his eternal personality. That's who I'm talking about. So yes, I've had strong disagreements with him and things like that. And, you know, but I see him the way I see every other individual and the way I see you. And I look at what they are doing in Krishna's service and what they are teaching that is correct. What elements of what they're teaching are accurate. There are many things, yes, I strongly disagree with that have been presented by him up to this point, etc. You know, but the point is, and same thing with many other individuals, like Sridhara Maharaj, for example, who I recognize as a pure devotee, but who preached inaccurately on a few key points and things like that. It's like, I don't see him as not a pure devotee because of those things. I just see that, okay, he's the pure devotee, and then there's this externalized psychophysical construction. But I don't identify people according to those external psychophysical constructions. I just don't, you know? So if I'm calling a person out on a principle or something, like I told Gaura Das specifically, I was like, Gaura Das, what's happening is people are taking what you're saying and basically they're running with it and thinking that they can engage in illicit sex here and there, you know, off and on. But ultimately, as long as they're focused on Raganuga, they'll bounce back and be just fine. But there's too much of a lack of emphasis on what brahmacharya actually is. It's being made out to be some like rigid regulation that you have to force yourself to do, when actually the actual Raganuga perspective of brahmacharya is that it's a symptom of gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna, and then you spontaneously feel inclined to practice celibacy due to feelings of affection towards Radha and Krishna and the love that they're giving you. That's the impetus for celibacy. But you're explaining it in a way that it's like some artificially imposed rule and regulation when that is not what brahmacharya is. And just things like this, I talk to him, a lot about, and once again, in the future, if people come and watch this video, whether it's me talking about, Garhar Das or Sridhar Maharaj or Narayan Maharaj, who I strongly disagreed with a lot of specific things he did and said, it's like I'm talking about what it is they're teaching, right? That can be adjusted for the health of everyone involved with them. It's not me calling them out like, saying, okay, you're not pure because of this or that. Of course they're still pure. Because they're an eternal associate of Radha and Krishna. Of course they're pure. But the point is, it's me saying, hey, if you do it and adjust it in this way, you will see a healthier dynamic arise around you and for the benefit of everyone. It's just an objective thing I'm observing, right? Just like what we're talking about now. Having these tenets in place will be healthier for everyone, right? And it will be good for everybody to have this dynamic going on. So if people want to personally do, and go really in depth on the Raganuga stuff, that's great, and that's actually encouraged. But it'll be with correct preaching that, okay, yes, brahmacharya is very important though and essential in this practice, and it's actually a symptom of gratefulness. So, it's like a person isn't going to be off and on engaging in illicit sex if they're really fully grateful towards Radha and Krishna for everything. They're just not going to be doing that because engaging in illicit sex for your own sense pleasure, which all illicit sex is done for personal sense pleasure, it simply means that there's not the full degree of gratefulness towards Radha and Krishna being experienced in the person's heart or mind yet. And that's just an objective fact. That's for them to experience personally and go through. It's not for us to judge and point the finger saying, okay, you're not experiencing love. It's more like, okay, this is the fact, and you need to analyze in yourself the degree to which you're being genuine about your affection towards them, etc. It's not for us to say what degree you are or whatever. No matter what's externally observed, we have to maintain pure internal vision ourselves. So my responsibility is to see Gaura Haridas and the people that love him and everybody else, even the people who despise him and what he says or whatever. I need to see every one of these individuals as pure devotees of Radha and Krishna, each and every one of you. That's my responsibility, okay? And it's unacceptable for me if I see you as anyone or anything other than that. It's unacceptable. I cannot see you according to externally observed behaviors as anything other than a pure devotee. And this is a standard tenet of the International Harinama Sankirtana movement. So, yeah. And I'm reading what you're saying right now, Nicholas. So it's going to take me a few seconds to read through this. I may not be reading it out loud simply because I don't want people to perceive or get the wrong idea of how I'm feeling about this stuff. Okay, let's see. Yes, I'm aware of what you're saying, Nicholas Paris. I'm not, and I definitely have noticed those things going on. But I see what you're saying. But I'm looking at it, like I said, from this perspective. I see that he is a pure devotee of Radha and Krishna, but not in a naive, sentimental way that I automatically agree with everything he says or does. No, not in that way. In the sense that I'm looking at him from who he actually is, and that's how I'm talking about him. And you'll notice this with me. When I'm talking about a person, I am, especially devotees, I'm always talking about them according to who they eternally are. I do not identify devotees. I especially do not identify any Krishna devotees according to their external bodily state or mind. I don't do that. And I won't. Let's see here. Right, exactly. And that's stuff I mentioned, Nicholas, many times. I was like, yeah, you can't pass off loose behavior as Raganuga Bhakti as like standard principles. Or this doesn't work. Basically, that being the case, it would just allow anybody who claims they're ecstatic or who feels spontaneously attracted to Radha and Krishna, and this is one way I knew because I got a lot of backlash from him directly and the other people who were following him for specifically just mentioning, hey guys, uh, like being loose or lackadaisical or just easing up on the principles and this and that. That's not that's not specifically what is related to Raganuga. Raganuga is like an independent thing, and you naturally feel inclined to follow the regulations spontaneously. It doesn't lead to you not following them on purpose or rejecting regulations as some like rigid things or whatever. That's not the perspective of the Raganuga towards the regs. So, yeah, all this stuff you're talking about, and I've talked to you about this many times over, but uh, that basically, that's kind of more of a tangent, and I think that would lead us off course regarding the topic at hand at the moment now. Because really we're talking about us, the International Masonic Harmony, and our responsibility, how we need to see people internally. So even though a lot of the points you're bringing up, yes, I agree with and I concur, and I know what you mean, I see him as a pure devotee internally. I don't look at all that external stuff. To me, that's very much side issue stuff, but needs to be acknowledged and recognized as, okay, we're going to see this. We're not going to let that happen amongst us, though. Okay, this is the thing. It's like, okay, those people are doing their thing, but we're not going to let that type of unhealthy personality cult dynamic develop among us. We're not going to let that happen. Okay, that's our responsibility, and so that should be our focus, not on what they're doing wrong or right or this or that. Basically, just looking at, okay, this is a great example of stuff that we're not going to be doing, in that type of way. Basically, you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I see. That's what I noticed. I noticed with a lot of these newer groups that are developing, where people are claiming Raganuga Bhakti and all this stuff. It's like, basically, I got so much backlash and all this other simply because I emphasized the importance of brahmacharya and celibacy, and I just kept telling people, I was like, hey guys, if you know, if if Raganuga really was like a thing where I could just be like loose and lax, because I always have been spontaneously attracted to Radha and Krishna, and it's attracted to that mode of worship. I've never been inclined towards the rules and regulations stuff. I've never have, and that's the fact. But then when I come to people, and just because I say, okay, but because I understand brahmacharya is important and I understand what it really is, that it's a symptom of gratefulness, and I mention this, I'm like, yeah, this is all great what you guys are teaching about Raganuga, but it's like, but brahmacharya is actually important though, as a symptom of that gratefulness, as an act of love towards Radha and Krishna. That's what it is. It's not supposed to be this regulation or something like that. When I bring that up, that's when I got up, and then I knew for certain, because they were doing that, because I am attracted towards the Raganuga stuff. There was all these false accusations. Oh, you're still lingering on with these Vaidhi like things. So all of these things were simply not accurate, were being told to me. So I was like, well, a pure devotee acharya who is fully aware of with internal vision and seeing people who they are, what's really going on psychophysically in them, I was like, these individuals are not seeing me psychophysically accurately, because they were simply saying things that are not accurate about me in terms of, okay, you're not at this, you're not. I was like, actually, yes, I am inclined towards Raganuga Bhakti. I am inclined towards that spontaneous devotion. That's what I prefer. And believe me, with my porn addiction and all this other stuff, if anybody on the planet would welcome with open arms Raganuga Bhakti actually involving not needing to deal with brahmacharya as a principle anymore, I would be the first person to jump on board with that concept if that was accurate. I would be the first person. I'd be like, holy crap, that would make my devotional life 1,000,000 times easier, wouldn't it now? But then what I noticed was then it always kept shifting back to, okay, Gaura Haridas is the guru, Gaura Haridas is the guru. So I was like, yeah, he's a great individual, but everybody, you guys, what you're doing, you keep shifting everything to Gaura Haridas as the great Mahabhagavata, the great guru, and you're like shifting it off of the actual tenets themselves now. So it started off with the tenets themselves being off, and then it shifted towards him being glorified as this great savior of the world. And then people actually started ignoring the tenets themselves that they were just discussing, like in previous videos and stuff, and sanghas or whatever. And I was like, it's just like, so basically anyone who didn't accept him as their guru specifically, and was not inclined necessarily to become a formally accepted disciple, got backlash and got hatred and got aggression. And I was like, that is a sign of a brainwashed cult dynamic that's going on, which can be fixed. It's fixable. It's just a matter of that's what's happening here, you know? And it's being allowed to continue. And anybody who calls this fact out is, is basically treated with the same standard run-of-the-mill brainwashed cult responses, most of which aren't accurate. Like people who are Raganuga Bhaktas are being rejected because they're not Raganugas, simply because they don't accept Gaur Hari Das specifically as their initiating guru, or aren't inclined to do that in particular. And then automatically, because they're not inclined for that, they're automatically not a Raganuga at all. And they're a Vaidhi and they're a poisonous snake and this and that. Yeah, exactly. I ran into all of those things. And I was just like, this is really bizarre. But it's like, and it's like, it was just confirmation. Because if somebody treats you like that and interacts with you, when you're actually on their side and actually do care about them, but they're processing everything as like you being a poisonous snake and this is trying to infiltrate. And man, yeah, that's just, I'm like, well, that's not how people who are consciously practicing pure devotion treat others who are inclined towards the same direction. It basically be like this. It's like, okay, somebody else is interested in martial arts, right? Or swordsmanship or something. And they're genuinely interested in swordsmanship. And I just start shouting at them, oh, you're not actually interested in swordsmanship because you're not wanting to be trained directly by me. So therefore you have no interest in swordsmanship. You're not a swordsman. That's not something you like. Huh? It's like, yeah, they're still interested in swordsmanship. It just means they're not interested in being trained by me personally. That has nothing to do with them being interested or not interested in swordsmanship. It's like, so it's the same dynamic. It's just bizarre. It's absurd, basically, and it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, exactly. Anybody who rejects the rules and regulations, I call them the principles of gratefulness, because that's actually what they are. They're not actually rules and regulations in that way. Most people, when they see those words, they misinterpret the whole thing. They're symptoms of gratefulness. That's what I call them, because that's what they are. So no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling. Those are things you do when you feel grateful towards Radha and Krishna and towards other living beings. When you feel grateful towards them, you just stop doing those things. So people making those things out to be like some rigid things you have to force yourself to stop doing, it's just bizarre to me. It's always been very bizarre, strange. Yeah. So, yeah, I will show you guys soon this list that I'm working on for all this stuff. What I've got written up. I'm focusing on the exact wording of it now, so that it makes sense. It just makes sense and isn't complicated, and there's really just pretty much about 5 solid tenets, and then there's like a couple more like sentences and pages of like specifics, how to deal with specific situations as they arise, but really pretty much we've got it all set in stone by this point in time, by the presentation of this video. And very excited about this, actually. Very excited. And because you guys have been assisting me in this with these chats, with these, whether video discussions or, the back and forth messaging or whatever, it's all been very useful, very helpful, because, yeah, this really is what everybody's wanting, They're wanting the sigh of relief in Krishna consciousness. Very much so. They're really wanting this calm and sanity back. This is what people are wanting. They're wanting to be able to, devotees are wanting to be able to live their lives again, and just be themselves, where, okay, it's like, yeah, there's this valuing of these principles and things, but in a way that people understand what they actually are. It's like, yeah, when we actually start to experience all these symptoms of love and affection, all these wonderful things, that leads to the person following those rules and regulations that much more. But it's based on them feeling that affection, and it shifts it. It's our responsibility as individuals to show others that affection. That is our responsibility, right? So it's not about us just internally purifying ourselves in some vague, like, okay, we have to see Krishna. Well, I should say, that is specific, seeing Krishna everywhere. But it's not just us purifying ourselves. Okay, we have to see Krishna everywhere as form, and then just, and as far as other living entities go, it's just willy-nilly. It's just like, okay, they're living entities. It's just somehow automatic that when you see Krishna, you're just a flick of a finger, you're automatically serving them or something. It's more specific. It's more like, okay, when you're seeing Krishna, you also are seeing them and valuing them also, at the same time, So, yes. So thank you very much, my friends, tonight. Without any further delay, I will end this off. And I look forward to the next few months and years ahead. And thank you all for being part of this international Harinama Sankirtana movement. I should say, actually interplanetary Harinama Sankirtana movement. And I look forward to seeing each one of you's infinitely unique expression and contributions to this movement, which is Lord Chaitanya's movement, and seeing what you have to offer and bring to the table for the upliftment of everyone, yourself and each individual. So stay happy, keep smiling, genuinely so. If you're not inclined to smile, don't fake smile. Either smile genuinely or just have a regular serious face. And, just rest well at night. Rest well knowing that you actually have people who care about you. Other devotees who legitimately care about you. We don't care about you based on you being a devotee or this or that. No, we care about you, the individual, on the real level, on a very, very practical level as well. And, it's all so much talk, of course, but you'll see it. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. The proof of pure loving affection is in actions. Seen actions and shown actions and displayed affection. Shown affection, I should say. Or I should say more specifically, engaged affection. And, yeah. Treat your families right. Treat your friends right. Treat them with kindness. And just love them, So see Radha and Krishna's forms directly and in them, and see how everyone you know is infinitely important and loved by Radha and Krishna. And so develop the same vision towards them that Radha and Krishna have towards them. Do that, and you will be successful in life. Well, good night, my friends. Hare Krishna. Hare Hare Bol. Welcome to the golden age of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Phase 3 activated. Hare Krishna. Jaya Shri Radhe.